If you're fearing these positions, these situations, these states of pleasure, states of power, and you're not going after situations that allow you, you're really missing out and you're cutting yourself short. You're keeping yourself small. You're not allowing yourself to express yourself authentically. Hello, 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 my beautiful, beautiful people, my friends, my family, and beautiful strangers. Today's episode, I have a confession to make. It is a story about how I used to believe that pleasure is just pain in disguise and how power is road to rejection. In this podcast, I share with you the crazy things that I go through in life and what kind of crazy lessons I derive from all of those things that happen to me, or for me, rather. But in this podcast, I share with you extracts from my journal because journaling is my go-to practice to make sense of world and life and everything that happens. And I read to you the passage and then we analyze it together. I guide you through the moment that led to this passage to be written, what was happening in my life, what am I really saying in this passage? And now, because we're going back in time and we're reading my journal from last year, I'm able to also give you an insight of how things changed and how the insights that I received back then have impacted my life and how my life is different nowadays. Today's extract is written in February 2024. And at that time, I was thinking a lot about relationships, career, like deconstructing certain concepts that I had in my brain. So, what I would do is I would either grab an emotion or grab a concept, literally a word, and then just put whatever I thought the associations, whatever I believed about that word or that concept that I'm talking about. This is how I began this passage. And without any further ado, let me read it out to you. What are my thoughts about pleasure? Is a feeling of happy satisfaction and enjoyment. Screaming thought. It needs to be earned. It is about doing something to deserve pleasure, both for giving and for receiving. Pleasure is a result of a difficult, hard, tedious, long action. First, you have to suffer, and then you're rewarded with pleasure. It is a big, noticeable, loud emotion. Small pleasure is just small enjoyment. Pleasure has to be big. Giving, and here I highlight sexual pleasure, needs to give me something first, needs to prove he's worthy of my divinity. And bear in mind, I say big ego. I need to enjoy first, then retribute, and go through pain first to get pleasure. To receive, it means to become vulnerable, to become fragile and exposed. I need to be safe. I need to be sure I won't regret it. And it can turn around and become pain. Non sexual pleasure is food, eating tasty, yummy food, feel good while wearing a sexy outfit, it's smelling something nice, it's driving, dancing, yoga, knowing lyrics to a favorite song, baking, cooking. And I think here I went on to just list the non sexual pleasure to remind myself that pleasure is not just about sexual part of it. And here I also highlighted how it would be in Russian is удовольствие. And what it says is удовольствие– это удовлетворение одной или более потребностей. Антоним удовольствия– страдание, горе, несчастье, боль. And in order to translate that, so the pleasure is satisfaction of one or more needs. Here's the first part of the extracts that we're going to be discussing today. And before we get to the second one, actually, I think it makes sense to actually highlight a summary of what are we reading here, right? So what kind of beliefs are clearly mm, standing out here? And if I put them down into fewer words, how would they sound? So what's happening here is that first, pleasure must be earned. Second, pleasure means getting vulnerable means there's a risk of pain, means it's unsafe. Pleasure is also proof of worthiness. There's an undertone of evaluation, both for my partner and for myself. So he needs to prove himself to me that he is worthy of receiving pleasure from me. And me too, I need to prove myself and I need to suffer first in order to receive pleasure from him. And the last but not least is that small pleasure is inadequate, that pleasure has to be big. So these are four really interesting conclusions, beliefs that I used to have in my mind. Now, I would like to read to you the second part. And then, for some reason, I decided to go on about power. Here I say the first associations with the word power, which are manipulative, only one in benefits. Someone ends up overpowered, someone is in loss and submitted. It's not equal and it's not fair. It is based on competition. The definition of power says it is the ability or capacity to do something to direct or influence behaviors of others. Instantly, I decide to add the translation in Russian. Власть. Распоряжаться кем-чем-то. Подчинять своей воле. And the last part says submit to one's will. And I ask myself, against the will of other? So here I say, I see power having more negative outcomes rather than positive. I see pleasure having more negative outcomes than positives, that the negatives have more weight than the positive. Because positive is momentary and is in the now, but the negative are the thoughts that stay in the mind for longer. And I see power having more negative because it has more impact on others. And I tend to care about others' well being more than my own. Others' comfort, how I drive, I park, how I work, cook, eat, my boundaries are weak. I seek to be approved by others for my behavior, still be liked and considered by others. So if I exercise my power, there's fear of rejection, fear of abandonment. I quickly say, what's the opposite of that? And the opposite is independence, doing only what I want, and knowing I'm self sufficient. So, power is manipulation. What will they think of me? I don't want power. I want submission, generous giving from others, charity, being at someone else's mercy. If I am too powerful and change others' behavior, they might dislike, resent me for my strength, and abandon me. So I am safer downplaying my power. If I'm small and I'm not making anybody uncomfortable, I'm easily liked. Right. So let's summarize what we're seeing here in regards to power. So, first and foremost, power is manipulation, it's domination, manipulation, negative outcomes. And early on, I can see myself having the association that exerting influence means harming someone. And if I am powerful, I am dangerous to others. Power is rejection because as I prioritize others' comfort and I fear the conflict and rejection, I choose submission as the passive strategy to avoid conflict. Power makes me unlovable, so I choose to people please to avoid rejection. I choose to submit to avoid rejection. Power is also loneliness because connection can only exist when I downplay myself. If I show strength, I risk abandonment. So, the fourth summarizing point of that is that submission is safety. It is safer to give up my power than risk being disliked. Being small is safer. However, I write here, over time it limits growth, self expression, and relationships bent on authenticity rather than compliance. I think the funny part here now is to look at these two concepts, pleasure and power. And at first, I don't see how they two can be related. But In my brain, they are. And what we can see here is that both pleasure and power have similarities in terms of their characteristics and how the associations and the connotations that these concepts have in my brain. Both pain and pleasure are dangerous, they are unsafe. Power is rejection, and pleasure is pain. So they're both dangerous. They're also transactions. So if I'm strong, someone loses. If I receive pleasure, I must give back. They're very transactional. They are externalized. So they don't come from within. They're all connected to the outer world and to other people because power, it's about how others react to me, and pleasure, it's what others are able to give me or take from me. And they're both linked to safety and abandonment. Because if I sacrifice power or pleasure, I'm going to be liked and safe. So there's no rejection and no abandonment. Fucked up, right? This is really fucked up the way that the brain works. But again, as I always say, awareness is the first step to solving a problem. So becoming aware of this really helped me to understand, okay, how can I reframe? How can I use affirmations or meditate on feelings of safety that both pleasure and power can bring. And all of this, I think, as well, we can bring down to a couple of lessons. So, first, in regards to power, power is neutral, is literally how you use it that matters. And influence can be ethical, it can be beneficial for both parties, for all parties involved, and it can be inspiring. And what I see myself here doing here is unconsciously undervaluing positive forms of leadership. So once I understand that the lesson power is neutral, I can really ponder further on what does ethical leadership mean to me? What kind of leader, what kind of influence I would like to be in this world, and how can I truthfully to me, authentically to me, step into the positions of power without fearing being rejected, without fearing for my safety. The second lesson that we can say here is that actually fear of rejection keeps you small. Submitting to others' comfort costs you your freedom of authentic expression. So as I'm worried about how the information that I want to share, the way that I want to be will impact others, and I'm not behaving authentically, I'm small, I'm downplaying myself, I'm not fully expressing myself because I'm fearing that rejection. So the main lesson here is work on your fear of rejection. And I think the best way to do it is actually go and get rejected as many times possible. The more you understand that it is never really personal, or even if it is, it shows more about the other person than it does about you. If you are being authentic, if you are being truthful, and if you are also acting in the highest good, you're not harming people, you're not disrespecting people. You're doing it for the highest good, even if the other people are not ready to receive it. They're judging you, they're rejecting you, they're saying, I don't want this, this is too much. Let it be. Let it be. It's their loss, really. You're much better being loud, big, and authentic rather than keeping it small for the sake of others. Saying I'm easy and I don't like conflict is fear, not choice. Third lesson is that pleasure does not have to be earned. It is very much connected to the self worth conversation that we had in my first episode. Pleasure, you are worthy of pleasure, and you can give yourself pleasure, and it doesn't have to come external. Pleasure is what you feel inside, and you're worthy of that. Fourth lesson is that safety is an internal state, not an external approval. So, as both of my concepts, pleasure and power, had a lot to do with that external validation and how other people received me or how they proved themselves. It was all very conditional. It was all about the other. But actually, if we run down and we see that a lot of it has to do with safety and those fears of abandonment, if I cultivate that safety from within and I stick to my boundaries and I trust that I'm able to stick to my boundaries, then I will feel safe in whichever situation because I will be true to my values and true to my boundaries. And that is unconditional, that it does not depend on other people. The fifth lesson is that power and pleasure are both forms of self expression and are not transactions. So I'm inviting myself and you to really ponder that pleasure and power can be all about creativity, flow, and joy, not exchange, control, and worthiness. Overall, I believe that nowadays I'm both much better with pleasure and power. I had to work a lot about accepting pleasure as something that I'm worthy of. Allow pleasure to come to me, where I allow myself to just simply feel pleasure without feeling the need to retribute or that I'm indebted or that I'm unsafe. There was a beautiful journey that I lived through. And the same with power nowadays. And the fact that I'm doing this podcast really is the testament that I really worked through that fear of rejection, that stepping in a position of power, that having a position of influence can be beneficial. And it's really up to us how we use that, how we choose to exert that influence and that power that we have. And I think we all intrinsically have it. So it's already within us. It's all about stepping in a position where you trust it, where you also accept it, where you value it, that you have wisdom, that you have value to share. And if you position yourself as an expert in something and you truly believe that you do have expertise in something, then the right group of followers, of supporters, of those who see you, who value the information that you're also sharing, will naturally come around. And I think that's also beauty of having of doing this work, is understanding these limiting beliefs that stop us from embodying our authentic selves, that stop us from taking those positions, that taking those opportunities to feel pleasure, to exert influence and power in creative, in beneficial ways for all of the people involved. If you're fearing these positions, these situations, these states of pleasure, states of power, and you're not going after situations that allow you, you're really missing out and you're cutting yourself short. You're keeping yourself small. You're not allowing yourself to express yourself authentically. And that's pretty much my intention behind this work for myself and for others. There's so much beauty, there's so much freedom in expressing yourself authentically, exactly as you wish, to express yourself fully, to own all of yourself, to own all of your pleasure, to own all of your power. That is what I wish for us. And I think on that note, this is it. Thank you so much for staying until the end and for listening and for receiving this value. I hope you are receiving the value and I hope you're taking that on your journey and improving, expanding your consciousness, your mind, and your life. That is my biggest intention, and that is my gratitude to be here speaking with you. Please do share with me your journey. Comments, send me a private DMs. Share with me your journey. What does pleasure mean to you? What does power mean to you? Let me know. I'm very excited to hear you. Thank you so much once again, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye.